let's go watch it in 2D. No, let's go watch it in 3D. But if we watch it in 3D, then is it worth the cost?
Hello, hello, hello. This is Adolf Vega from 3D or 2D.com, and today I'm reviewing Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. As always on my 3D or 2D.com reviews, I'll talk about the 3D element first. So, Star Wars is, and you imagine it in your head, 3D is something that you could totally see being part of this. Now, this is the first Star Wars to actually be debuted in 3D. All the other movies never had a 3D option. They did re-release Episode 1 in 3D, and I think they had plans for Attack of the Clones and the rest, but things didn't plan out. So, this is the first one that was made, to be released in 3D, and I really like it. One thing I recently posted on the website 3D or 2D.com was an article talking about stereoscopic 3D and how looking at 3D visuals could really help you interpret emotion of people on screen more than if you saw the same pictures in 2D. Basically, the idea behind this is that you could better understand facial features because when we look at people in real life and you can read their emotions, we look at them in 3D. So, having that being said, I really liked how this movie did that because many times the characters had close-ups and you could really tell in 3D what the emotions was going on in the movie. Now, of course, reading emotions because of the 3D is not the only aspect of the 3D that I liked. It did help me bring me into the movie and understand the characters' motivations and why they did things better. But the thing I enjoyed the most was just overall how much they used the 3D to make it look better. It's very sharp, very vivid, and you see so many spacecrafts fly in and out of different planes of 3D. It goes into the background, goes into the foreground, and it just consistently looked very nice. And there's one scene specifically with a Star Destroyer, and it was popping out of the screen, and it felt like it was right in my face, and I really enjoyed seeing it that way. I just wanted to grab it in the air, and it really kind of brought me into the scene. So this 3D really brought me into the movie more, and I enjoyed it more because I felt much more into it, literally and figuratively. And I just love this kind of 3D when it really feels like it adds to the movie, adds to the emotion, adds to the storytelling, and it's just something special. And it's not the best 3D I've seen this year, but it definitely is pretty high up there. And definitely well done, well executed, and something I could easily recommend. So, the final verdict will be great 3D. Now, onto the movie itself. Star Wars. Wow. This is one of the biggest franchises of all cinema. And it's one of the hardest ones to review because there's so many different fans and it's transcended popular culture. People think of it as a religion, and everyone knows Star Wars. Even if you don't like it, if you don't like science fiction, you know what it is. It is every generation since 1970s, since 1977 has had a Star Wars to love. The younger generation has the prequels. The older generation for me has the originals, and now a new generation has this. And I think Star Wars Episode 7 is a great movie. Um, it really does feel right. It takes place about 30 years after the sixth movie, Return of the Jedi, and many of the characters from the original Star Wars trilogy, Episode 4 through 6, return, such as Han Solo, Princess Leia, to name a few. The movie begins with the characters Rey and Finn, which are new characters never before seen in a Star Wars, and a droid named BB-8, which is adorable. BB-8 and whoever did the robotics for him just did a fantastic job. I really enjoyed watching him on screen. He actually kind of had emotions, and he really felt that he added to the scenes that he was in, and it was just cute. Anyway, BB-8 knows the secret whereabouts of Luke Skywalker, and Rey and Finn are trying to find out how to get to him. Now, there's a new villain named Kylo Ren who's also searching for Luke Skywalker. Kylo Ren is part of the organization called the First Order, who rose from the ashes of the evil Empire. Now, I won't really get into more details of the movie because I don't want to spoil anything, but I really like everything about this movie. Kylo Ren is a fantastic villain, and the Ren and Finn are Rey and Finn, excuse me, are both really likable main characters. It feels both new and familiar at the same time. And some people kind of complain. I could kind of see when I watched it that it feels very similar and familiar to the fourth Star Wars movie or the first released one, A New Hope. But to call it a reboot or a rehash of that is just a gross oversimplification, and it's just not fair. Yes, it is very similar in some regards, but a lot of movies are similar to other movies, and it's not that big a deal. You know, the hero's journey, which this is, where you basically learn who a person is, something happens, this, and they become the hero, is a very classic storytelling trope, and it's actually something that is easy to really get into. Having this more traditional basic storyline works because you're introduced to a ton of new characters, and having a more familiar feel works. Now, would I want all the next sequels to feel familiar like the previous Star Wars? No, I would want them to grow and have more, but I think as a start of a new trilogy, I think it works beautifully. And part of the reason why it works is because the story is given enough time to develop and feels fast paced at the same time, where you always get traction. There's always things moving the story along, and you never feel too rushed. The characters in this movie are really likable, and um, the returning ones from Return of the Jedi, the original trilogy, Luke and Han and Leia, they work, and they work perfectly. They feel familiar from that trilogy, but yet more sophisticated, older versions of that character. And those actors have done a fantastic job of being part of this movie, of getting in, re-energizing themselves to be those characters after such a long time. So I think all the characters are given plenty of time to develop, especially the main characters Ren and Finn. Unfortunately, some characters like Poe Dameron and Captain Phasma were not given that much time to develop and have very little screen time, but both of the characters are very interesting, and I hope and look forward to maybe seeing more of them in episode 8 and 9. The character motivations all make complete sense and are well written and portrayed on screen. I've never seen the actress that plays Ren and Rey in this movie, and I think she did a wonderful job. You really get a sense of who she is, why she's doing what she needs to do, and it just feels right. It's kind of hard to describe why it works, but it just does. Same thing with Finn. You completely understand why he does what he does, and you could really relate to these characters, and they emoted fantastically, and were given great dialogue, and everything feels natural and is well written, and portrayed very well. I enjoyed everything about this movie from beginning to end. The action sequences are thrilling, are fun, and have wonderful special effects. I have to give props to the director, J.J. Abrams, for using practical special effects and only occasionally using computer graphics. It makes the movie more lived in, more authentic. I appreciate the makeup and the actual figures and everything more. It just works better than having everything be fake in CG. Well, I know CG can make some fantastic visuals. The visuals look more authentic and more real because they are real. They're, BB-8 robot is an actual robot. It's not just a, computer animated ball, and it makes you much more enjoyable because of that. Much more of an enjoyable movie because of that. Um, so I just loved how this movie flowed. There's one element that I didn't like though, and that's unfortunate, but things happen so conveniently. There's a lot of plot holes that are not resolved and left completely open for a sequel or a comic book or whatever to fill in the gaps. And so many times we're watching it and it becomes a distraction. It's like, well, that was easy. How convenient was that happen that way? I can't really say specifics without spoiling the movie, but it got annoying where I was like, come on, really? That is going to happen that way, in that sequence to make it easier for the movie to keep going? It's a minor annoyance, but it's one of my pet peeves when it comes to movies, and Episode 7 is very much guilty of it. You know, at the end of the day, Star Wars The Force Awakens is an incredible accomplishment in cinema. Simply put, it feels right to watch this movie and satisfies the extremely high expectations the film set for itself. It feels like the original trilogy and yet feels new and different for this generation, for the new generation. It is refreshing and wonderful to see an African American main protagonist and a strong female main protagonist. It feels different. It doesn't feel like the same movie. It does feel the same in some regards, but it familiar and new at the same time. And it is just a massive success. I walked out of the theater with a big smile on my face and I wanted to cheer because this is the Star Wars that I love. I my favorite Star Wars is Episode 4 New Hope. It just works. And Return of the Jedi I enjoy, and um, Empire Strikes Back I like to another degree. The original trilogy, or the prequel trilogy, excuse me, I kind of liked, but not too much. And the best one of that is obviously Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Um, but I wasn't always that into Star Wars, except for A New Hope. And this movie reminds me a lot of that, both in tone and in story, but in how it captures the awe of a space opera, which is what Star Wars is really about. You know, it's meant to be an episode, and a serial. It's meant to be kind of a space opera, and it works. It works completely for this level. It works so well that it's a great movie on its own. It's a great sequel to Return of the Jedi, and it washes away the bad aftertaste of the prequel trilogy. This movie is worth the hype and is well crafted, pure fun, and a true spectacular spectacle that is completely and totally worth your time. It's not perfect. I wish it wasn't as convenient at times, the plot holes, and I hope a lot of the plot holes are fixed in episode 8 and 9, but I still love this movie. When you find a movie that you really like and it's done, and you're like, I want to see it again. This is episode 7. I want to see it again. I want to see it again. It left me happy and satisfied. And I was hoping that it would, and wanted it to. And after the prequels, which I don't want to compare them to this, but after the disappointment of those movies, I, was never been a huge Star Wars fan. I enjoy them for what they are, and I like them, but this movie has made me into a super fan, and I can't wait until the 8th movie. I can't wait to get more. This movie is a big home run and works at every single level, and I definitely recommend you seeing it. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. That's my final verdict. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the show. May the Force be with you. Okay, so that's going to conclude the podcast.
Remember to rate this podcast on iTunes and on Stitcher Radio.
Also remember to follow us at 3dortoonie.com on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram.
Please comment on the website and subscribe to us on YouTube.
Finally, I hope you enjoyed the show, and thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.